A great video game sequel is supposed to build upon the content of its predecessor, but sometimes the complete opposite happens. Instead of adding new features, the sequel takes some of them away. From the mechanics that made the franchise famous to an entire chunk of content that might have defined gameplay in the first place, nothing's safe from cutting out. And although the decision to remove these features isn't made out of malice, it always hurts the fans' experience with the new game. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 awesome video game features that suddenly went missing in the sequel. Number 10. Custom Heroes, Darkest Dungeon. Unlike the original Darkest Dungeon, Darkest Dungeon 2 tries to provide its cast of characters with more development. Instead of being a randomly generated set of color-swapped sprites, the heroes in the sequel all have set names, personal story quests, and even a set list of personalities that affect their dynamic with other party members. This is all great for fleshing out the characters, but at the same time it does take away one key and highly entertaining feature of the original, customization. Because each hero is treated as an individual and not a class type anymore, you only get one of each, and you're limited in how you can customize them. You can no longer give them silly names, change their colors, and worst of all, there's no way to get duplicates, meaning that the days of weird team compositions like a field trip of 4 antiquarians or 3 plague doctors are over. Sure, the more individualistic approach to the heroes in Darkest Dungeon 2 makes them more intriguing story-wise, but sometimes you just want to have a bit of fun, especially in a doom and gloom world like that of Darkest Dungeon. Number 9. Mexico, Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a game with great attention to detail. Rockstar went all out with fleshing out every minute part of the original world and gameplay, and that's why it's almost impossible to find something the sequel would do worse than its predecessor, except for one not so tiny omission in the form of the entire region of Mexico. Yes, the iconic location of Nuevo Paraíso, where John Marston spends a significant part of the story in Red Dead Redemption 1, was cut out of the second game. Seeing as the sequel expands on everything, it feels weird that it would remove a huge chunk of the original map, especially since Mexico is actually present in the game. It's just empty and not accessible without exploits. Long story short, the decision was made to avoid plot holes in the story, since John admits in the first game he's never been to Mexico, so it wouldn't make sense for the gang to travel there. It's a shame though, as Mexico really was the most memorable part of the original game. It was so good, in fact, you could almost forgive Rockstar if they decided to throw their storyline structure out the window. Number 8. Leaders change over time. Sid Meier's Civilization 3. Sometimes it's the simple things that bring us joy, and in the case of Sid Meier's Civilization, it's all the little details that pop up on your map and in the menus. Though the newer Civ games offer a staggering amount of features when compared to their older iterations, there is one small detail that went missing somewhere along the way, even though you can still find fans who'd do anything to see it again. In modern Civ games, when you lead your nation of choice through the ages, their leader remains the same. Harold will rock a helmet and sword even after his people start flying in fighter jets, and Theodore Roosevelt wears suits 3,000 years before they're invented. This is why it might surprise some people that back in the Civilization 3 days, the leader portraits would actually change with the times. Instead of always sticking to the same outfits, the leaders would wear era-appropriate clothing, which led to some interesting and sometimes hilarious outcomes. There was something truly magical about seeing Abraham Lincoln dressed like a medieval merchant, or Montezuma sporting a tuxedo, standing in a modern glass office. It's just something that the monotony of modern civilization leaders can't capture. Number 7. Blimps. Cities Skylines 2. The release of Cities Skylines 2 was met with some controversy regarding the DLC content of the original game. Fans were unsure if the sequel would put their favorite features from add-on content packs behind another paywall, but surprisingly, Cities Skylines 2 included most of them as a part of the main game. That said, not every feature made it in. Although the sequel boasts many public transport options that were spread across multiple DLCs in the past, one mode of travel has been left out. Blimps. The armada of glorified balloons that used to overwhelm the skies in Cities Skylines 1 is not present in the sequel. The decision was likely caused by blimps being a somewhat unreliable and buggy form of transit back in the day, but it still doesn't mean that their exclusion isn't somewhat disheartening. The huge and colorful blimps added a certain charm to your cities and allowed you to give them a unique personality. Not to mention, it was pretty entertaining to see a line of 100 blimps lining up in the sky whenever the simulation of Cities Skylines 1 was getting a little confused. Number 6. Mech Troopers and Gene Mods, XCOM Enemy Within. The storyline between XCOM 1 and 2 changes drastically. You start off working as a secret government agency tasked with responding to alien threats and end up leading a human rebellion against the alien empire that took over planet Earth. The huge shift in the story also has an impact on the gameplay, including some of the features that didn't fit within the new plot. The DLC for the original XCOM, called Enemy Within, introduced the ability to modify your soldiers genetically and cybernetically. Your organization could extract genetic material from aliens and then use it to create hybrid soldiers with powers like bioelectricity or natural camouflage. On top of that, you could also replace their squishy human bits with shiny mechanical ones to turn them into a Transformers version of a super soldier. The sequel drops these ideas for regular soldiers and generic robots. It makes sense considering you play as a small rebel force that's paranoid about introducing anything alien into its force, but you still can't help but feel the strive for doing things the human way robs your forces of their cool factor. Number 5. Pokémon contests. Pokémon Emerald. As much as Pokémon games love to remind you that Pokémon are your friends and companions, it's hard to deny that almost all parts of the series' gameplay revolve around putting your Pokémon into dogfights with other Pokémon. Of course, dueling random preschoolers and fishermen can be fun, but sometimes you just want to relax with your Pokémon and do something a little less violent. Well, too bad, as that one such feature went missing after Pokémon Black and White. Introduced in the series' third generation, Pokémon contests were special competitions where the player was offered a pleasant alternative to constant fighting and fainting. The contests were basically beauty pageants where your Pokemon were allowed to use their powers for more than just mindless attacks. Each move was treated as a unique trick that your Pokemon could perform for points, and you were even able to set up combos to impress the judges. Gameplay was surprisingly in-depth, providing trainers with a refreshing break from spamming the attack button and health potions. The feature was reintroduced briefly in the remakes of Pokemon Sapphire and Ruby, but it's never made another appearance since. Apparently, it just wasn't violent enough for the Pokemon world's liking. Number 4. Origin Stories. Dragon Age Inquisition. Despite being more than a decade old, Dragon Age Origins still enjoys a large following, and it's all thanks to the features its younger successors are missing. There are plenty of differences between Origins and later Dragon Age titles, but the most striking one would probably be the thing that's mentioned in the game's title, the main character's origin. Dragon Age 2 forces you to play as one specific person, Hawk, and while Inquisition allows you to create your character with a unique background, in Origins you actually play through what you choose. Depending on which race and class your character has, the game offers you 6 unique scenarios to help you better acquaint yourself. The feature gives you a deeper and more intimate understanding of your character's past, which in turn helps you immerse yourself in the world and makes later parts of the story feel much more impactful. It's a shame these types of intros didn't make a return, as in Inquisition, when you play as a dwarf or an elf, you don't feel so connected to your background. Number 3. Body Weight. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. As we mentioned before, Rockstar loves to expand its games with each new release, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all past features will always make it to the sequel. One particularly interesting example from the world of Grand Theft Auto is the body weight system from GTA San Andreas. Just like Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2, CJ from San Andreas was able to gain or lose weight, depending on what he ate and how much he exercised. The system was pretty complex, even more so than its Red Dead counterpart, as on top of getting skinny or fat, CJ was also able to develop his muscles by hitting the gym and lifting weights. Unfortunately, this feature never made it back into later GTA games. No matter how much you run or eat as the protagonist from GTA 4 and 5, they always stay the same. It's a shame because who wouldn't want to see Michael rock a perfect six-pack, or let Franklin grow into a dad bod to fit in with his mentor? Number 2. Advanced Dialogue System. Fallout. Fallout owes a big part of its success to compelling stories and pure role-playing elements. The games offer players a wide range of choices and dialogue options to make their experience enriching and meaningful. Offered, that is, not offer, because with the release of Fallout 4, everything changed. The game replaced an abundance of dialogue options that made titles like Fallout New Vegas so famous with a poor man's version of Mass Effect's dialogue wheel, including generic responses that can be boiled down to yes, no, question, and sarcastic. It's it's obvious why Bethesda decided to cut down on the dialogue options, as unlike the other Fallout protagonists, the sole survivor was fully voiced. But it doesn't change the fact that this was a huge blow to the overall experience. So what if a Fallout protagonist can now talk if they have nothing interesting to say? That's the whole point of having dialogue in your game. At least the voice actors did do the characters justice, and some of the sarcastic voice lines can genuinely be pretty funny. Okay, it's a consolation prize, but we take what we can get. Number 1. Open World, The Sims. The initial launch of The Sims 4 was a topic of huge controversy. The game came out lacking an entire inventory list of features that are pretty much a staple of the series. Swimming pools, hot tubs, burglars, life stages for toddlers and babies, you name it. However, whereas most of this content was eventually added to the game through free patches or overpriced game packs, there's still one missing feature that Sims fans lament to this day, including me. This is a huge gripe, let's talk about it: the open world. When Sims 3 introduced open worlds into The Sims, the entire series seemed to have undergone a revolution. The ability to just let your Sims, any Sim in your family, travel wherever they want without loading screens, then interact with the world as it changes and adapts to your choices, was the kind of freedom every Sims player had secretly dreamed of for years. The open world was the promise of innovative change that would add a whole new dimension to the series' gameplay, and yet when Sims 4 came about, it magically disappeared. It was taken to a secret vault of ideas that are too good to be true and replaced with a shoddy map filled with predetermined lots and an ungodly amount of loading screens. Great. That's the end of our list of awesome video game features that suddenly went missing in the sequel, including my personal gripe. Please leave yours down in that comment section. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I've been Jess McDonald. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, or on Twitch where I'm Temperatress. Make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great gaming lists. Thank you.